One of the reasons I like coming to COFES is because of this man that is standing up here right now. I always leave here with a new and a larger way of thinking about the world that's around me. It could be an OODA loop, for example, which I like very much, the whole notion of an OODA loop and a system of systems. And I put Jack into this spot for very specific reasons, because I wanted him listening and thinking about what we've been talking about here and sort of trying to synthesize some of this stuff so that we can have a robust conversation around it. So I would very much appreciate it if all of you would help me give Jack Ring a very large applause.
Thank you, Ken, and good afternoon, everyone. How many of you had a joyous Easter? Good. Mine was fun, because at my age, I can hide my own eggs. Then after about 30 minutes, I have no idea where they are, and it was a great fun. I appreciate this opportunity to share ideas with you. These reflect my experiences in EDUCE LLC, the Latin root of educate, where we serve those who know they don't know, those who don't know they know, and those who don't know they don't know. We do not strive to serve those who know they know, because it takes too much time and effort to help them see that much of what they know just isn't so. And then they don't appreciate it. This morning we experienced excellent presentations and dialogue, I think. Now I will suggest how we can kickstart our coevolution. The evolution of and to sustainability. I will make two claims. One, coevolution comes from within, and two, the basic idea is to experience it, not just talk about it at conferences. It's not about the systems we build, it's about the system we are. According to Dee Hock, co-founder of the Visa Corporation and author of The Birth of the Chaotic Age, the first steps are to commit to a compelling purpose in your life, and secondly, to commit to a few principles that will foster synergy among you and your community of purposeful practice. I suggest that we consider these 10 degrees of synergy. Starting bottom left with connect, which we can do with one another, and ascending up to co-evolve, which we can do with each other. Some of you may remember this chart from last year. I won't ask for a show of hands because it might embarrass me, hurt my feelings, or perhaps you can just hide your own Easter eggs next year. These, on the left, indicate your degree of contribution to your community, the degree to which you can connect, communicate, converge, commit, cooperate, etc. And these indicate your degree of contribution to your community, the degree to which you can make your attributes accessible to others, to have a common language with others, share self-respect with others, have the courage to plan, etc. Read the chart this way. To connect, you must have accessible attributes so that each can discover one another. To communicate, you must have a common language so that interests and values can be shared with one another. To converge, there must be a shared self-respect to pursuing the compelling purpose. Otherwise, each will just do their own thing. To commit, you must have the courage to plan so that a principled relationship enables the whole community. To cooperate means compatible actions, cooperate, enabled by your willingness to wait on the slower person. Co-celebrate means to enjoy one another. If you commit enough time and space and do enough face-to-face. Then to co-labor or help one another, you must have a desire to serve your fellow human being. There's more. The current literature stops mostly at collaborate, as if that's all there is. But design and sustainability demands more. If you share your knowledge claims and appreciate others vetting them, then you can co-learn through meaningful reflection. And if you co-facilitate, means that everyone in the community is a leader, a round-robin role-playing. In any group, if you encourage and support in-party stewardship, then the return on effort that you realize approximates E to the N power. Finally, then, if you co-evolve, you have a joy-enabled level of consciousness yourself, then you will foster each person in the community toward a win-win-win situation. A joy-enabled level of consciousness may be a strange concept to some of you. Perhaps the next charts will clarify, or we can deal with that in the discussion. The 10-level personal best stack may seem quite challenging. Is the capability to co-evolve with your associates worth it? What is the value proposition of co-evolving? On the positive side, the various communities in which you will engage always become more fit for their purpose. They will win more often. Also, value will be earned by do no harm. This becomes more important as our world becomes more complex and chaotic. If we build not the right systems, they will do more harm than good. It may not be easy to achieve. For example, for 2,500 years, physicians have taken the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm. Yet the data today shows that approximately 50% of their prescriptions are in error. They are not fit for purpose. On the prevention side, first, you will help prevent hubris and intelligent arrogance, the inability to admit error in your own work, thereby to learn. Second, you will help prevent what I call premature immaculation. That's when consensus overrides critical thinking, also called groupthink or clanthink. Groupthink occurs when consensus is reached, even though some in the group know the conclusion is incorrect. It's the go along to get along syndrome, also called being a team player. Clanthink is when a community of strongly like-minded people totally agree without even considering alternatives. They just know that that's what we should do. Third, you will help prevent recurrence of the law of unintended consequences, which Robert Merton warned us about in 1936, and too many of us still commit 80 years later. Slow learners, eh? In order to get there, you will need to overcome impediments. Nobody said overcoming impediments will be easy. Changing yourself and facilitating change throughout your various communities of purposeful practice can be a very daunting task. Or you can leverage the strategy of the dandelion, as our own Joel Orr has advised. Dandelion seedlings, like good ideas, are not impeded by walls, and we've always done it that way. In fact, the air currents caused by the walls lift the seedlings up and over the walls and takes them on their way. So the issue is, I think, are you sustainable? The question is not how sustainable are you? Instead, it is a yes or no question. Are you sustainable? If you are not sustainable, then all the effort we might put into sustainability methods and tools will be futile. You will always race to defeat them. If you are sustainable, then you can write your clear, compelling purpose regarding sustainability in about 3 minutes. Have you written one yet? Secondly, you can write 9 or so principles by which you will abide in your community of that purposeful practice. Have you written those yet? If you're not quite sustainable, can't quite write those yet, then I recommend that you, number 1, become a reflective practitioner. Number 2, co-evolve your character. And thirdly, then, go make lots of little mistakes and learn, but no big ones. Professor Donald Schoen at MIT told us 30 years ago how to become a reflective practitioner. Summarized here, it says, you can learn 4 levels of behavior. Knowing how, then reflection later on how know-how was applied, then knowing in action, that is devising while doing, and fourthly, reflection in action, which is me watching me compose. Most all interviews with successful authors, composers, musicians, etc., every one of them says that during their performance, they're up there watching themselves. Then, if you learn 2 kinds of knowing, then when it comes to applying what you know, find a coach. Then evolve to co-coaching while using 1 or more of these 3 techniques, which is joint experimentation, or follow me, or the Hall of Mirrors technique. And I'm not going to try to explain that because you need to go read the book. Underneath, as Martin Luther King said, it's not about the color of your badge, it's about the quality of your character. It moderates how you will strive for your personal best. Frederick Herzberg, University of Utah, says that there are 6 levels of growth. The first 3, knowing more, understanding more, and then creativity, which are qualitative leaps of insight that you have, can be coached. The last 3 must be learned from self-discovery, which means you must learn to practice reflection. When you're a little guy or gal, maybe sometimes you went out and sat under a tree and thought about things, but maybe you don't do that enough anymore. The ability to reflect on our lives is an extremely important technique. Character begins to form by age 3, by the way, after your first traumatic event. And then it continues to evolve. Well, by the way, hopefully, you become an optimist rather than a pessimist. There isn't much difference between the two up to about the age of 39. But after 39, you're 20 times more likely, a pessimist is 20 times more likely to suffer a major illness than an optimist. Enough of the psychology. Let's consider the pragmatics. Please raise your hand, or if you're aware of this rule, that fixing a design error is much more costly late in the project than early in the project. You all seen me opinion of that? Then why don't we? Do you remember at the age of 7 or so, you learned how to check your work in arithmetic? If 7 minus 3 was the question, and you answered 4, Then you could check your work by inverting the sign on 3 and then adding to your answer to see if it equaled the original. Do you remember learning that? Practically everyone did, although kids under the age of 30 today didn't have this benefit, it turns out. Unfortunately, those who did experience it quit checking their work around the age of 17 when they became infallible. And then when they got a college degree, it's worse, and PhDs don't even recognize the concept. When did you last ask someone to check your work? Unfortunately, one person can become unpopular if they run around checking the work of others, unless both appreciate this critical factor in the coevolution value proposition. This is fundamental ingredients in co-evolving. And if we don't get after checking our work, we propagate error at a rate you can't even imagine. And if it hasn't been dramatic enough, we're now going to invent the Internet of Things, which will amplify the propagation of error of 10,000 to the nth. When we get to extent, variety, and ambiguity of sustainability that Doc and others have described, and particularly for autonomous systems that make their own choices, it is very useful to invert this curve to represent another measure, that is, the relative benefit of early detection. Just the opposite, but in fact it's about 3 times more significant. So the sooner you find an error that's been made, the better off everybody is. Now it can be done and automated as software and system integrity assessment across all logic, arithmetic, and semantic factors in any model and across any expanse of software in a matter of seconds. Here's one example of how a 4-person community of purposeful practice co-evolved with the work of 6 pioneers to bring the above into practice. We have discovered this way to find the sources of all bugs in computer software and system models, therefore in their authors, and we expect that this can be expanded to checking design ideas at the conceptual stage of a system. You can also evolve to preventing no big mistakes from day one of a system project through year end of its usage life. Be forewarned. We intend to help co-evolve every one of you to check your work regarding design and sustainability. Another activity that's going on out there, which you may have become aware of, the Arizona chapter has about 250 corporations in it right now, meets every month, is the conscious capitalism movement, which focuses on the officers of corporations. And it is, in fact, a way of thinking about making capitalism and business better reflect the human journey and galvanizing higher purposes and creating a higher state of consciousness that harvests synergies among us and creates conscious leaders driven by service to the company's purpose, to all the people and business touches, and to the planet we all share. A trusting, authentic, innovative, and caring culture. Financial, intellectual, social, cultural, emotional, spiritual, physical, and ecological metrics for all stakeholders. Helping billions of people flourish in a world of freedom, harmony, prosperity, and compassion. Hell of a vision. This group isn't there yet, but they're surely making progress. You may want to look into them. Final recommendation: design not only for the problem that you address, but also for the problem that your solution will cause when it's turned on. It is not sufficient to just think about how your system is going to bring value. You've got to think, then what? Because the problem is going to change once you start dealing with it. And if your system doesn't evolve, it can't keep up with the changing problem. And if you don't co-evolve, your system can't co-evolve. Thank you.
Well, Jack kind of hit me over the head there with a couple of things. There's no doubt within our practice of architecture that professionals are professionals, and they're so busy being professionals, they have no time to reflect on their work. They have no time to think outside of their profession. And we build these buildings, and we don't have the slightest idea how they actually operate. We think we do. They're in our models, but what actually got built isn't what's in the model, nor is it how it's operated. So you just hit me over the head with quite a few things. Who else?
I'm pretty loud. I mean,
Nope, you got to have a mic. I know you're loud, and I can be loud, but they need the mic. And tell us who you are.
okay. Thanks. So Brian Peralt from Needham & Company. And I thank you very much, Jack. I think that was, in my opinion, the best presentation so far this morning. Could I ask you to put one of the slides back up? Because I had a question for you that relates to the slide where you had the curve and the inverse curve. And I have two observations, and I may sort of contradict myself here. Okay, if you go to the next one.
I think it was back this way.
Yeah, this one right here, and then with the inverse curve. Right, so my question is, so I work in financial services advising companies on capital raising and M&A, which is why I'm here to meet all of you smart people and maybe learn something in the process. But it was interesting in your observation here about human error and the cost of measuring failure and so forth. And my question is, whether you're selling technical software or you're selling financial services, or in Brad's case, you're selling conference attendances, obviously part of the fundamental basis of Sales 101 is building a logical case around the avoidance of what the painful alternative is, or in this case, the cost of failure. And yet, in spite of that, as you point out, failure persists in the system over and over, and we continue to make these mistakes over and over again. So clearly, there exists a dimension of human performance where it cannot be measured by creating a logical case to avoid failure, and in fact, people avoid taking reasonable, necessary action to avoid such failure because of they're afraid of not being liked, loved, and accepted. So there's an emotional case, and then there's a logical case. Meaning, if every salesperson made a case solely just on logic, there'd be a lot of people who would never buy the product, in spite of the fact that there's a compelling logical case they should take action. And so I just would ask you to comment on the fact that in spite of the logical case, that in fact there's this sort of emotional component of human performance, or the dimension of human performance that sort of compels us to continue to experience failure in spite of having strong reasons not to otherwise. I don't know if that made sense or not, but
Yes, that makes sense. But my immediate advice is that we need to learn that the emotions that any person has is part of the logic that they apply in their lives. The human brain cannot discriminate between reality and illusion. You are incapable of doing that. So the only way that you know that you're not wandering around in a dream world is to communicate with somebody else that might have a chance of telling you that your logic, emotion, etc., is screwed up. Now, when you come to financial services, you see, one of my favorites this year is auditors. In previous years, the United States government has dealt with Enron and other people who had habit of cheating by fining them millions of dollars. January of this year, the Assistant Attorney General of the United States, at least, announced that henceforth and forever, when a corporation is found to be guilty of fraud, financial fraud particularly, they're going to indict and convict and incarcerate. So my message to every chairman of the Internal Auditing Committee on every board of directors is you better learn how to figure out whether or not the software that you're believing has bugs in it. Because it isn't just a matter of making the books balance anymore. You're responsible for the truth of those numbers. So does that come anywhere near responding to your question?
Yeah, it does. And then I guess the other part of it, I'm sorry, the microphone wandered off, so I'm just going to keep going. But I guess the other part of it is, you mentioned conscientious capitalism.
Yeah,
I think you called it conscientious capitalism.
conscious capitalism.
And I mean, obviously the other argument would be that in a, sort of capitalist system, that the proceeds from economic activity should flow to the shareholders, who can then reinvest in whatever philanthropic causes they think are appropriate.
Yeah.
And so the only purpose of the economic system should be to maximize the returns for those shareholders, so then they can in turn choose the philanthropic activity that they support.
Yes,
and
sir.
so coming back around to my emotional component, sort of, I guess the question is failure sort of an intrinsic part of every system? And in fact, we need to sort of acknowledge that you can't sort of peer into someone's head and understand every insult that's been thrown at them since they've been 5 years old. I mean, people are going to continue to fail because of the lack of being able to build an emotional case to avoid failure, logically, as you point out.
Well, one of the techniques I think it turns out to be valuable is that you should notice that there are two kinds of shareholders, legal ones and emotional ones. All right? And the emotional shareholders, because most of your good business comes from word of mouth, not from sales presentations, the emotional shareholder is your best salesman. So you should pay attention both to your legal shareholders and your social or emotional shareholders, and make sure that both of them are well served. Make sense?
I guess the last question I have is, are these slides online? Because I'd love to get a copy.
Yeah,
of them.
yeah.
There's no copyright issue.
We've got them all. They will be online. I'm not quite sure how quickly they'll be online. It usually takes a week or two. 2 to 3 weeks. But yes, and you're right, there's a lot of great resources on these slides.
And if we reference Jack, you by name, can we use these as long as it's footnoted without copyright issues?
Yes, I think I put it on here, but we've got to make sure. The footer should say copies permitted for educational use only. Okay? And back to one of your early statements, I'm not selling anything. I'm notifying you that a body of knowledge has been created. We've sifted stuff out of the last 40 years of some very bright people, and it's in a 155-page book. And just as soon as we can, it will be made available to anybody who wants it. And we're terrorizing professors in 35 engineering curricula to learn how to teach real engineering. Because, we're old and decrepit and we don't need money. We've got more than we need. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, Doc Hall, you can recognize that. It's the art of dialogue, and there's a lot about that. And thank you, I'd never heard of the conscious capitalism movement, but it seemed to me that something that would add is the practice of dialogue, and that began, I don't know, way back, way. formalized somewhat by Bill Isaacs from MIT. And you start with simple rules. But it's kind of like golf. Rules are very simple. It's just the practice that's hard. Notably, listen to learn, beginning one. Second one, when you speak, think about what you're going to say ahead of time. And don't think about what you're going to say when somebody else is talking.
Yeah.
And as you do that, two things. One is state facts and where you got them best you can. The other one, extremely difficult, is what are you assuming? What are your beliefs and what are you assuming? If you map all that out, you got a much better picture of what a really messy thing is. So I rest my case. Anybody wants to talk a lot more about it, well, I'm game.
Excellent point. The third point of dialogue is then you ask them to repeat what they heard. You must confirm that they heard what you said. And you're going to find that more than 50% of the time they didn't. Unless you purposefully close that loop and check your work, you're in discussion, not dialogue. Discussion, is like percussion and plain old cussing. You've got to get to dialogue, right?
Pete Marks, I just wanted to pick up a little bit on the discussion you had there. This idea that, first of all, on Sunday we're going to talk a little bit about what the purpose of a company is. And in '72, it was Friedman that made the very compelling case in the New York Times and later followed that the sole purpose of a corporation is to money for the shareholder. The point that you made that has been taught to MBAs ever since. If you actually look at the data, companies that follow that mantra are less profitable than companies that follow at the same time Drucker's mantra, it's to serve a customer. One of the reasons for that is the emotional thing that you were talking about, that if I'm working for a company whose goal is to enrich the owner, I'm not nearly as engaged as if I'm involved in a company who's there to help the customer or who's there to help the patient or whatever. It also ends up that if I'm in a company whose sole purpose is to maximize shareholder value, which is measured daily by stock price, then it's okay to do a cost-benefit analysis on a Pinto and decide not to spend $11 to fix the tanks. It's okay to do a cost-benefit on GM ignition switches and decide we can't spend a couple pennies more to solve that problem. It's okay for VW to so just in the interests of capital, you actually want to engage some of those emotional, Then there's been a previous wave of looking at mission statements and business objectives 20 years ago and stuff like that. So anyhow, there is this other kind of conscious capitalism can actually be good for capital while not making profits the sole objective there. So anyhow, just a thought that I wanted to weigh in.
Excellent.
Okay. Slightly different take on that. Okay, we live in the United States, capitalist society. What happens if the governance rules change and you're no longer allowed to measure return on investment as how you measure a company? Because you exist as a company by having a compact with the government saying you have a license to operate your business. You're incorporated, an LLC or whatever. That gets pulled away. And the only way you can become a company or participate in society is through other measures. Okay? It used to be you participated in society not because you had a incorporation, but because you served the customer. You didn't serve the customer, you didn't exist in the business. You didn't have to worry about the government saying, oh, you have a legal right to exist. You had a right to exist because people were willing to exchange fair value for you. I see that happening as a trend over and over again, that as companies have gotten greedy, I won't even say companies because it's individual people making the decision to do things like that. Society as a whole is saying we got to constrain that more. So I see that as something that's going to affect how capitalism works throughout the world, within the next 10 to 15 years.
One final point, and I don't want to start a political battle, but earlier Ken remarked that when he drove from Yellowstone to Oregon, it was all smoke. from fires. I'll submit that if you look carefully, there were some areas that were not smoked. Those were the land owned by the Native Americans, because they know how to husband a forest, and they do it. All the rest of the land, the Bureau of Land Management is prevented from husbanding the forest by the Sierra Club in court. So there's a group of very well-meaning people who don't check their work.